Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 10.
People, when they call me back and say, my blood sugar has stabilized, I've lost 30 pounds, things like that, I'm sleeping through the night, I don't have acid reflux anymore. I mean, these are the gifts that I get back from putting out my time and energy, to help people get on a program that's really life-changing for them.
Well, I am just thrilled to have Jennifer Saltzman. I want to call you Dr. Jennifer Saltzman of Pilates.
Great.
I keep wanting to say that. But Jennifer Saltzman, who has been an instructor of Pilates for 21 years. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
In the last time you were here, we talked about what is Pilates and who it's good for, which is every body.
Yep, pretty much.
And we talked a bit about spirituality and how to maintain a healthy attitude and mindset, mental health, physical health, emotional health, and spiritual health. And I love that you talked about make sure you're surrounded by community, and that they found that one of the reasons why they feel that the Japanese is so healthy is that they surround themselves with community, which is so true. I mean, people who are lonely, they actually say that single men live shorter lives than married ones, and probably because the men don't take care of themselves, but if they're single, but yeah, when you're alone, you're less likely to be motivated to even take care of yourself, whereas when you have other people looking out for you.
Well, and I think there's a huge piece too about looking out for other people. I mean, I think part of what community provides, I think one of the biggest trouble that people get into in life is getting so self-centered and so self-focused that they forget that, if you've ever noticed when somebody's not doing well, if all of a sudden they have a task that they have to do to take care of, for instance, a sick baby or a sick someone else or anything else, suddenly they rise to the occasion. And I think part of what happens in community is that both you receive from others, and you're able to give to others. One of the things they do for people who are really depressed and, kind of having a really hard time is they actually force them into service as a tactic, you know what I mean? And get them thinking about something other than themselves. And so I think that, both the give and the take is really important.
That's beautiful. And I know that anytime I have assisted or volunteered at different organizations, I love how in the moment it felt like a meditation, we call it seva or selfless service, when you get into the now.
Right.
And in that moment you disappear and you dissolve. Exactly. And you are just being the selfless service. And there's something so fulfilling about your ego dissolving and giving way to giving to others. And it's like you get more out of it than the person you're giving to.
One of the things that it just astonishes me is, I've been involved in a lot of really praying for other people in different churches and things that I've been involved in. And a lot of times when when I'm in the position of being the one that prays for somebody, I will feel the presence of the Holy Spirit so strong on me, and they don't necessarily feel it as strong. In other words, the vessel is getting, is getting wet, and so I think it's true in service that, you just sort of, grace takes over, what I mean? And we get out of our own heads and we get out of our own problems. And, it's the same for when I'm teaching Pilates. A lot of times when I'm really in the flow of teaching and, I'm so blessed to have groups of people that are, that are friends and that joke around. And they're clients of mine that have been with me for years, and they just stick with me because the method is so great. And I think they actually enjoy coming, because we make it fun, but there's just times where, maybe I'm not feeling so good that day or whatever's going on. I just know that when I start getting in the flow of being in service and thinking about something other than me, suddenly I'm not so, whatever, and I just think that that's something that people really can take to the bank, because it doesn't take much. Sure. It doesn't take much to reach out to a neighbor or a friend or somebody that you have no idea that just, recently my husband just really injured his back, and he's the one that takes out the trash and does all the things. Well, just to have my neighbors come over and help me take the trash out and, carry the groceries in and do things that he really was responsible for doing around the house. I mean, it didn't take anything out of their day, and it made such a huge difference in mine. And honestly, years ago because I was very, very sick for a number of years, and we don't need to get into that, but I went through a really, really hard time, and, have been so blessed to bring so much learning out of that. I remember thinking to myself, I just if somebody could just help me with one little thing, how much that would mean. And realizing that I didn't, because I didn't really know how to ask or what to do, but just realizing that we have so much to give. And it brings health and well-being to ourselves to be in service.
And there's another point, is learning how to ask.
Yes.
We are taught as women to be independent.
Right.
I mean, this is cultural. We are taught that we have to break away from the leave it to beaver stereotype.
That's right.
That women are subservient and belong in the kitchen. And so we've done this like 180 where we won't ask for help when we need it. And then men are taught, from a very young age, men don't cry, and men are taught not to be in tune with their body and their emotions and to ask for help also. So we're both walking around really suffering and needing help, and if we would let go of that false ego and ask for help when we need it. Because what I love is there's something that I get when I get to help you.
Right.
I get the gift of giving.
Yep.
And Christmas happened, and it was like I got so excited about buying this one gift. I found this mug that looked like a prescription bottle but it's for tea.
Oh.
And I was like, I can't wait to give this to my friend who loves tea, and this is going to be so great. And she's also an herbalist, and she's also a doctor of naturopathic medicine. So she's just going to she's going to love it on so many levels. And for days I was excited.
Yeah.
And I got so much more joy out of giving it.
Yeah.
And then she liked it. But, I got a lot of juice out of it. And we get so much out of giving.
Yep.
But the person receiving has this, they're taught, I can't ask for help. I can't show up as weak, or whatever their previous story is in their life, whatever their parents or grandparents taught them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think particularly in this culture, I don't know that it's like that way everywhere, because I grew up fairly isolated in terms of not being involved in extended family, and I really haven't lived a lot in community. I can really see the value of it. It's something that, I always think it's strange that everyone on the block owns their own lawnmower and vacuum cleaner and things like that. Like, why don't we just buy 3 and everyone shares it, things like that, But anyway, there's a real gift in getting outside of yourself.
So there's a gift in giving, and there's a gift in allowing people to give back to you.
Yep.
So if we would just implement those two things.
Well, I think, and one of the things for me that's such a blessing is that's kind of what I get out of teaching Pilates, is that, like I said, I'm clearly giving something to them. I'm instructing them. I'm teaching them how to use their bodies more efficiently. They're feeling great. They leave feeling great. And what I get out of it is the ability to fine-tune my skills and learn from them. My clients teach me so much, and I'm constantly asking them questions about how do you feel things, and learning from them in that kind of way. And again, doing the supplement coaching and the nutritional coaching, people, when they call me back and say, my blood sugar has stabilized, I've lost 30 pounds, things like that, I'm sleeping through the night, I don't have acid reflux anymore. These are the gifts that I get back from putting out my time and energy, to help people get on a program that's really life-changing for them. I think it's really something that we are blessed to find something that we can say that about, to do in life, not just feeling like, you're doing your work for naught.
Right. And this is something that in the previous episode, I believe it was episode 1, that Dr. Megan Saunders briefly described what she felt the definition of having a fulfilled spiritual life. So she was talking about, which is what we embody, and at Learn True Health is that health is emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual, and that it is free of limitations. So if you are free of limitations emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually, and Dr. Megan said it's not like what religion you are. Find your spiritual meaning to life. And what that is it's a sense of purpose. And so whatever religion or whatever you believe in, if you find a sense of purpose, and I feel like if people create community, give to each other, and ask for and receive from each other help emotionally and mentally and physically and spiritually, then right there, that's a purpose-driven life.
I think so too, and like we're alluding to, I think we fall very, very short, particularly in the asking. I mean, I've had to reach out lately and really ask for help from certain individuals because of what's gone on with my husband and him getting injured and things like that. And it's not necessarily easy because we do live, especially maybe it's here in the Northwest. I think it is to some degree. In the Pacific Northwest, we are very individualistic. We are not very community-oriented. People say that when they move here, it's really hard to meet new people and things like that. And I mean, I just think that, some people are better at it than others, but I think we as a culture could do better to facilitate, the giving and the receiving, and that it's okay to ask for help. I think that should be fostered more to our children, and that they're taught that okay to ask for help. It doesn't mean you're weak, and it's okay, and it's also okay to extend help even if a person's not asking. Honestly, it was even a little strange. Like when I asked my neighbor to do this, I thought he was willing and everything, but if it was me, I would have said, "Is there anything else I can do?" Is there anything else I can do for you? Or, and I just don't, I don't know. I mean, we get so caught up in our own lives that we forget that we're all one and we're not separate. We have an effect on one another. We can influence one another both to the positive or to the negative. And the more we start embracing that, we all live together on this planet, and the more that we can foster, let's try to live as one here. I know that sounds a little John Lennon-ish, but
Well, if each community took care of its own, we'd have a significantly different world.
We would.
So, and it starts with us as individuals.
Yep.
Anyways, I loved that. I just wanted to elaborate on that last point, so thank you. But moving on, do you have a book that you could recommend our listeners read? Something to help them improve their health? And what would it be and why?
One book?
What's your favorite book, or what's a book that had a large impact on your health?
There was a book that I think probably had one of the greatest impact. I mean, apart from reading the scriptures, which, reading the Bible is not an easy feat. So it's not always, I can't just say that. But because a lot of people, you need it sort of broken down a lot of times. There was a book that I read called Commitment to Love. Commitment to Love by Maureen Moss. I think that book radically changed my life. And it's not a book about physical health or about nutrition. It's a book about perspective. It's a book about a lot of different aspects of perspective, about what we're doing here on the planet, about the time that we live in, and spiritually what is available to us in terms of help, about laughter, about service, about challenges and trials. And she breaks it down in a way that is very, very digestible. And I had I think I would have to say that if I can think of one book that has really radically changed my, I'm not a big reader, I have to say. I'm not a big reader. That's why I majored in dance.
You're a doer.
I'm a doer, yeah.
But no, that sounds like a brilliant book.
Yeah, it's called Commitment to Love by Maureen Moss. Yeah, it's a good one.
That's great. Now, our listeners may or may not be Christian.
Yep.
And I don't want to turn anyone off, or so you'll see someone hears prayer and they think, oh, that's it. I can't listen anymore. I can't get anything more out of it because I'm not Christian.
Yeah, no, that's not how I define Christianity. is let's limit everyone and put them in a box or anything.
Right,
like that,
right,
yes.
and I think that whatever your religious beliefs are or aren't,
yep,
there is something incredibly powerful about prayer. Share with us the moment in your life when prayer made a biggest impact on your healing, on your health.
I don't know that I could identify one time, because I can identify a time when I prayed a prayer that I believe is coming to become manifest about helping others. So I'll share that first, and then if I can think of one that impacted I think honestly probably the prayer that would have been, if you want me to share what happened, I was really sick for a lot of years, and I was working with a man who basically for 2.5 years did body work on me. And
I was a massage therapist?
He was kind of, I would say if anything, more like an osteopath.
Okay.
I went to, right when I was done with my Pilates training, I actually got really sick. And I was taken to see him, referred by a gal in my training. When I was 22 years old, after I got back from when I graduated from college, essentially, I went to a dance camp.
You burnt yourself out.
I burned myself out, and I couldn't really walk when I got out of that. My knees kind of blew out. But from there, things sort of progressively got worse. And so I ended up basically functioning above it, and like I mentioned in the last one, it's like a building that looks strong, but there is a foundational crack, a huge foundational, or maybe many foundational cracks.
I think a lot of people can relate, especially women can relate to what you just said. Dr. Molly Niedermeyer, who's one of the doctors we worked with, says that women drag their bodies behind them kicking and screaming, we drag our bodies through the mud, and our willpower alone is what drives us, and that we need to take the time to heal. And so her as a doctor, she really helps people put their bodies back together, but that describes what so many women go through. Now they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they realize that they've been, dragging their bodies behind their willpower.
Well, and sometimes, unfortunately, it takes sort of a catastrophic event for somebody to realize, wow, I'm completely out of balance. Now, for me, it happened when I was really young, so I think it's somewhat common for people to be, I was just living my life. And, but I was pushing, maybe not harder than the next, gal next to me in dance class. Other people were doing what I was doing, but because I had some serious foundational cracks, I couldn't function above it without falling apart. So, it's a long story. There's lots to it, but the bottom line is, in my 20s, I first couldn't walk very well, and then I started having all kinds of pains in my gut and problems and all kinds of things going on. And when I found this body worker, this osteopath, he thought I had a fractured sternum. And so he reset my sternum, rebroke it, and then I couldn't move my arm for literally 2.5 years. So there was a lot of dysfunction, on every single level. Well, in the middle of all of that, after 2.5 years, I saw this osteopath again. And I would say, get back to your question about what is the time when I prayed that made the most significant change on my health, is because, I was bedridden. I was on welfare. I couldn't clean my house. I couldn't be out of bed for more than maybe a half an hour before I had to go lay down again. I had pain, my arm was turning purple. It was just, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me from the doctor's perspectives. Anyway, after working with this man, and I felt hope working with this body worker. I felt this was what I needed to do. I felt that it was ordained. It was, it all kind of happened. And through my Pilates training, this gal had led me to this. And so I was confident, and I had hope that this was going to help me. I never really lost hope, and although people that knew me, several people thought I was not going to make it. They pretty much thought, she's going to die. But at any rate, one day, this guy was working on me, and he says, you're dealing with a spiritual problem here. And so he addressed it from a spiritual perspective, and he kind of enlightened me about what he thought was going on spiritually with me, and he prayed for me that night. Well, what happened to me is I literally woke up in the middle of the night that night. This is the prayer that I would say started to turn things around. And out of my innermost being, this came out of me. I was asleep. I said, Jesus Christ, you are Lord and Savior. Now, again, I don't want to offend anybody, but this is what happened to me. I was raised Jewish. I grew up.
Oh, I think we need to stop. Hold on. Jennifer Saltzman was raised Jewish. It wasn't like, she was
Right.
brought up in the church.
Not at all. Not at all. So I'm not, my understanding of Christianity or whatever that means is very, 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 very organic. There's nothing, boxy.
No one came to your door, knocked on your door with the Bible, and started hitting you over the head with it.
No, not at all. And so this is what happened. I was raised as a secular, no real religious Judaism, but I by heritage I'm 100% Jewish, and I had my Pilates training. I broke down. My body started breaking down. This man worked on me for 2.5 years, never said a word about anything. And one day I'm in his office and he says to me, "There's something trying to kill you." Basically, is what he said. You're being, there's a spiritual force trying to take you out.
Wow.
And he basically performed what you would call a deliverance or an exorcism or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I don't want to attach too many words to this because people have their ideas of what that is. But literally what happened was he pulled something really dark out of my energy or my being or whatever you want to call it. And I almost, I was screaming in pain. I almost got sick. It was very violent. And, but then he prayed for me and he basically said, God is lonesome for you when you don't talk to God. That's what he said. God is lonesome for you when you don't talk to him. That's how he brought it to me. And I was like, I was so broken. That day this man was a wonderful man, but he was odd. Okay. And this day, he turned like he started glowing. I mean, I don't mean glowing like a light bulb, but I saw him turn light. And then he prays this for me. And then that night I wake up in the middle of the night, fast asleep, out of my gut, Jesus Christ, you are Lord and Savior. And then from that time, what happened was, and so that was probably the most important prayer I ever prayed. Even though it just prayed through me. The Spirit prayed it through me. It wasn't me, And then I began having to go through I knew by this, again, how all this stuff works together, it doesn't in our own understanding or in our own control. I think there are forces of good that lead us to what we need.
Yes.
And so this is what I believe happened is, somebody was looking out for me. And, my mom had people praying when I was really sick. A priest down in Mexico, I guess, prayed for me. But never when I was a kid did I have anybody praying for me or anything like that. As a matter of fact, anyway, no need to get into that. But the point is that
what happened after that?
That was like what I call being born again. When people say born again, that is what I consider that to be. I came out of my being. I didn't do it. It happened to me. It found me, and I'm proclaiming this, right? And nobody taught me how to say this. No, like I said, I'm raised without
You're
Jewish. No, but not Jewish meaning, nobody, I didn't even know anything about Christianity. Nothing, we celebrated Christmas a couple times, but that's it,
Yeah.
And that's like, buy presents, it's a different reality, a tree. But anyway, so after that, I just, because I was literally like bedridden. So I couldn't do much, and I would watch TV, and by chance, I happened to fall asleep with this lady on the television talking about something Christian, and I didn't usually watch Christian television. It just that, you don't have much to watch. I fell asleep, and it just kind of a couple little things here and there. Well, anyway, long story short, someone else not long after there tells me, I think you need to check this out. I think you need to look into the protection of Christ. Then this man comes and tells me something's trying to kill me. This all happens. He prays for me. I have this experience. And the next thing is that I knew that I had to get to where there was a very strong, high force of people praying for people who were sick. I needed to get into, and so there was a minister who has a healing ministry, a prayer ministry, where he gathers 20,000 people together and prays for the sick. And I knew that I needed to get to him. And so I called up this gal that used to do body work on me years ago, and I just happened to call her and say, listen, I'm coming down to Arizona because I need to go see this guy. This is where he is, and I just want to let you know, maybe we can hook up or whatever. And she's like, well, my husband just happened to tell me we need to go to a revival. And I'm like, well, this is where we're going. And so it was like, there was provision. There was provision for me. They met me at the hotel. They took me to these meetings where the prayer was going on, and I experienced measures of healing.
Wow.
And I experienced some healing. It wasn't like all at once or anything.
So you had a fractured pelvis.
I had
there
a
was
fractured
something,
sternum.
Sternum. Something was wrong with your arm and it kept turning blue. Doctors couldn't figure what was going wrong with you.
I had almost no energy. I could hardly.
You were in bed like 23 hours of the day. You couldn't, and you're an incredibly strong-willed person. You were physically fit. I mean, a dancer.
Right.
You danced for like 8 weeks straight, you know.
Right.
And until you blew out your knees. Like you have strong willpower, strong physical health, and yet you were so sick.
Yes.
And then you experienced healing through prayer.
Yes, absolutely. I began to, so that was sort of like, you know how they talk about, you know, you're at the height of this thing, or, you know, or what do they call it, where there was
a bell curve?
Well, yeah, like, you know, I mean, the worst of the worst, and then, you know, you start to get a little
climax?
You kind of get, yeah. So like the worst of the worst was sort of before it got better, or the darkness before the dawn. Like I was completely, you know, I was 25 years old. I was on welfare. I could not take care of myself. You know, thank God there was a man in my life at the time who had the grace to take care of me like a mother, and he did. And, you know, I thought I was going to marry this person. This is, you know, and whatever. Anyway, but
that sounds like another story. We're not going to go there.
Yeah, that's another story. But at any rate, what the point is that I had someone taking care of me, basically, doing my shopping, everything like that. And so the point is once I had that experience of, you know, this man praying for me and me having this proclamation of, you know, the lordship of this Christ, whatever that meant, I didn't even really know. You know what I mean? And it just came out of me. And so I start going to these meetings and I start getting a measure of healing. And then I knew I needed to keep getting there. So then I would start watching this guy on TV every day. And I mean, I know this sounds like, you know, the cheesy healing evangelist, but this is really what happened to this Jewish gal.
If you knew Jennifer Saltzman like I do, you'd know she's a very grounded, loving, sane individual.
Right.
And so I just love your story.
Yeah.
So, I love that. So you pursued this.
So I pursued I knew that, you know, when you know how it is, like when I got involved with Dr. Wallach, and you know how it is when you get
excited.
Well, well, not only do you get excited, but you know how you plug into whatever is already there?
Sure.
So you glean from the energy or the positive flow of whatever already exists. I knew that I had to plug myself into this particular ministry. I just knew it because there was such a strong power for healing that this particular minister was a gift. It came to him, you know, similar ways that he didn't even intend, which, you know, his story is amazing. But he, you know, it came as he was a young person, and he didn't mean for this to happen. It found him, right? So he walks in the authentic power of this, right? And so I pursued the ministry. I pursued getting plugged in. I went to Phoenix. Then they were in Portland. We drove to Portland, and I got another measure of healing. I ran for the first time in years when I was in Portland. I ran down the hall, and I had a freedom that came upon me that I had not experienced in 3 years. You should have seen me. I mean, I'd lay in bed like this. I would be afraid to barely move. I was like a mummy.
You can't see her, but she looks like a mummy, a stiff mummy.
People would laugh at me. Friends would come over, and I'd be like, I mean, literally, I had so much fear and injury that was just around my whole being. I was afraid. It was, you know, I mean, it was so fragile. At any rate, and this is after, you know, going through my Pilates training and you know and being
and you
a
were
dance.
So excited to help people with it. And, wow.
But so that's the prayer that changed my life. Now when I started to go through all this, and you know, I was really cooped up for about 2.5 years, and I was in a lot of physical pain, and a lot of, you know, just in a bad way, in a lot of different ways, on so many different levels. My digestion was, things were just a mess, and so I don't need to get into the details. But there was one day I remember, and I did a lot of journaling at the time and a lot of drawing, because that was one of the ways that I found to be therapeutic. I would try to draw what I felt inside. And I remember sitting at my desk with my crayons or whatever I had out, my pastels, and I remember thinking, I am in so much pain. I am 25 years old, and I am, you know, a mess here. And I just remember praying a prayer. I said, God, please do not let any of this suffering be in vain. Do not let any one iota of this suffering be in vain. In other words, let me be used to bring health and well-being to others, which is what I was basically praying. Don't let any of this be wasted. And I distinctly remember praying that, and I was able to teach a little bit of Pilates at the time, but I had to work an hour, take a nap, work another hour. It was really hard in the beginning. At any rate, and I really believe that prayer has been answered and is being answered currently, on many different levels, but getting plugged in with Learn True Health is a huge piece of that, because, here we are creating this, I don't know what to call it, this resource, I guess, for people to plug in on so many different levels of well-being, wherever they need to get what they need to thrive. And so this is a real part of, I feel, an answer to that prayer, is to be able to share this with other people. And, this is a platform that that's enabling me to do that on some level. And so thank you guys for facilitating that.
Thank you for sharing your story. I know that it takes a certain level of vulnerability to sound potentially crazy,
Right, sure, yeah.
Right, because that's how we are painted. If we were to share a spiritual experience, people immediately go, oh, well, I don't want to say everyone, but some people
do, yeah.
will take that the wrong way,
Yeah, well,
until it happens to them.
Exactly.
So there is a realm that we cannot see physically.
Right.
And so until you have an experience.
Yeah, I had some crazy things happen. One thing that happened was I remember one time is this is to share this one more thing. I don't know, maybe it's cool because I really believe that whoever created us knows us. Okay? The Creator knows us individually, and we are uniquely created. And when I was remember how I said I couldn't really move hardly, I was very stiff? Well, one night I had this thing happen where all of a sudden I felt almost like an angel or something came. Something came, and I got out of my bed, and I was literally rolling around on the floor dancing. And I know that sounds weird, but for a person who understands movement and dance, it made perfect sense to me. And I was moved into these dances, into these flowing things that actually brought a measure of freedom and healing to my body. And I don't know, maybe people have experienced this in other realms, maybe. So I don't know because I haven't researched it. But I know it exists. And I know that it's a piece of healing. And to be honest with you, it's something that I believe is something that's going to come out for me in the future, because it's happened since then. And it's a realm of, I don't know what to call it, but it's like one of the body workers that I worked with over the years, because I worked with a lot of healers and a lot of body workers, he said, you have an innate, almost like a wise woman, an older wise woman in you that knows how to dance you into health. And I know that this particular time, I couldn't move, so I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have done it. It wouldn't have been safe for me to do it. But with the assistance of whatever was helping me, it moved me into these amazing positions that were way beyond my ranges of motion at the time. And the next day, the person that was taking care of me, I told him what happened. I said, this happened to me last night. And he said, I was visited by something. And he says to me, he didn't know anything. He says, Gabriel.
Archangel Gabriel.
That's what he said. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take that as confirmation, because I didn't say that to you. You said that to me.
Yeah.
And when I was there, and I know I'm getting into all kinds of realms, people can take it or leave it or whatever, but this is what happened, And I'm really kind of give it to me in 2 minutes. I'm as straightforward and, dot every T and cross every I. I'm pretty, right?
You're a straight shooter.
I'm a straight shooter. Yeah, I'm a straight shooter. So anyway, that's,
So Dr. Molly Niedermeyer was just telling me about, she was listening to NPR. She was like, oh, did you hear this story in NPR? And I wish I had. She said that there's a doctor who's having great success working with the VA in helping veterans overcome post-traumatic stress. And as you know, that's a really, really big deal. And he has a research where he talks about that mental health, it has to be affected by other parts of our health. So there's the Venn diagram of, you've got a circle that's emotional, and then you've got another circle that overlaps, and that's our spiritual body. And then you have another circle that overlaps, and that's our physical body. And then you have another circle that overlaps, and that's our mental body, and they all affect each other. And Tony Robbins has, everyone in his or a lot of NLP trainers, not just Tony, but at the beginning of a course, he'll say, okay, everyone stand up, and
Yes.
put your arms up in the air and smile. Even though I don't care if you're depressed, put your arms up in the air and smile. So, if you're...
Affect your
if you change your physical being now, okay, don't do this if you're driving, but, if no one's looking at you and you're all alone, do it. Stand up, sit up straight, or stand up straight, pull your shoulders back, have your chin up, put your arms up like you're making the letter Y in YMCA, and smile. And do this for 30 seconds and just smile and breathe. And you cannot feel sad when you smile. Even people who are chemically depressed, it actually
affects the brain,
affects our physiology. So changing your physical state affects your emotional state affects your mental state. Everything can affect your sense of spirituality, your sense of feeling of purpose in the world.
Absolutely.
And so we are able to affect this. You change one, you change the other. This doctor has been helping men and women who have come back with post-traumatic stress, help them not only through therapy, but he incorporates into therapy ballroom dancing. Because he has found that by doing new movements, by getting them to go out and to do something new, physical expression. They are actually having higher levels of healing emotionally.
That is so awesome.
Yeah. I thought that was really
love that.
cool.
And maybe even if they're in wheelchairs, right, they can do it.
Oh, absolutely. It's about a new movement, right? And so I just love that there are people out there, and people like you. You're a healer. You're like a master healer, and you surround yourself with healers, and you have so much knowledge. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Before we go, I have one last question for you. Now I want you to lay down the gauntlet for our listeners. Give our listeners a challenge, something they can do in the next 7 days. So starting today and for the next 7 days to improve their health.
One thing?
Well, something.
Probably the most important thing that comes to mind that they could do that's very simple is try to drink at least half of their body weight in water.
That is very good. So you mean body weight in terms of ounces?
In terms of ounces.
Not in terms of pounds.
In terms of ounces. So if they weigh 150 pounds,
they drink
75 ounces of water per day.
Wow.
So that is probably the single most, if they can only do one thing, the single most important thing that they could do to improve their health on a physical level. That would be a challenge. Now, if they really want to take it to the next level, I would encourage them to get a hold of some of Dr. Wallach's plant-derived minerals to put in the water, because then, one thing is they should try to drink filtered water, if at all possible.
Yeah, don't
drink it out of the
city
tap.
water. Yeah.
And bottled water really isn't, that's been sitting on the shelf is really not ideal either. Getting a good filter is really the key, but you do the best you can. Some water, not so great water is better than no water. So drinking water is really important because we're made up 70% of water. And one of the major problems of people's health is dehydration. It's a major player.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so even better, they can contact me at my website if they want to know a little bit more about how to mineralize the water. Really inexpensive way to improve your health is just even to get on these basic plant-derived minerals that make such a huge difference. I can't say enough about that.
So if they'd like to...
Those would probably be the two things I would say to do on a physical level, is get on water with plant-derived minerals.
And if they'd like to order the plant-derived minerals and talk to you about anything else, they can contact Jennifer at takeyoursupplements.com.
Perfect, exactly. Yep.
Excellent.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for laying down the gauntlet. I'm already drinking a huge amount of water because in episode 4, we had Dr. Molly Niedermeyer talk about the importance of water. She shared something really interesting. So if you haven't listened to episode 4, you want to go back and listen to it. She said that a 5% reduction in our body weight in water results in a 25% reduction in our level of energy. That's a scary
huge.
thought.
Yep.
Because now everyone's walking around pounding back Starbucks and Monster drinks, which deplete us further of water.
Which are, right, dehydrating, exactly.
Yeah. And because everyone's it's like this chicken or the egg. Everyone's starved of energy and dehydrated. So thank you. We're all going to drink more water now.
Yep,
and
good.
hopefully get some plant-derived minerals to go with that.
People don't really understand the power of minerals. Just even that can make such a radical difference in your well-being, because minerals really are at the foundation of all your function. And so we need them for all of our bodily functions. And unfortunately, they're not in the food the way that they used to be. And so that's another piece that I'm hoping to get the word out on, besides all the Pilates and things that people can do, is just really help people on that level, on a larger level, to tweak just a little something in that regard, make a huge difference.
Well, we're going to be doing that because we have a lineup of naturopathic doctors to come onto the podcast. And so keep listening, listeners. We're going to explore this idea of minerals and trace minerals. Excellent. And why isn't it in our food? And how can we get it into our body? And what kind of role does it play in our health? So thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming on the podcast. I had a ton of questions that I didn't get to ask you, but we'll just have to have you on the podcast again.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's been a blast being here.
Terrific. And again, if you want to contact Jennifer, it is jennifer@takeyoursupplements.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking for even more ways to feel and look healthy? Come to learntruehealth.com and get our free healthy cookbook. There are some delicious recipes and they're super healthy for you. All you have to do is visit learntruehealth.com.